Good evening, everyone. This is Brett Provenzano, Superintendent of Fairport Central School District. We are here tonight with board members in attendance on the YouTube live channel via Zoom, and I have Board President, Mr. Tim Sliz here.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, everyone. This is Brett Provenzano, Superintendent of Fairport Central School District. We are here tonight with board members in attendance on the YouTube live channel via Zoom, and I have Board President, Mr. Tim Sliz here.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, we're live, and we're going to let people come into our YouTube live session. So we'll give it a couple minutes for our lobby to fill, and we'll begin our presentation in a little bit. So do we have people coming in at this point in time? Good evening, everyone. Once again, it's Brett Provenzano, Superintendent of Fairport Schools. We're here for our community budget meeting. Looking forward to getting some input. We'll be starting in a few moments as our lobby continues to fill with residents who are interested to learn about our budget, and we can share some priorities that have come to the forefront and learn with the community. We have Mr. Sliz here, who is our Board of Education President, will be representing the whole board, and we also have board members in attendance that are here tonight and via YouTube Live. That's what I'm trying to get these guys. Oh, I'm going to go back there really quick and just. Good evening, everyone. This is Brett Provenzano, Superintendent of the Fairport Central School District. Welcome to our community budget meeting. To my right, I have Tim Sliz, who is our Board of Education President. We have a number of board members that are present here at Fairport High School, and a few that are also in the YouTube live session observing. We're looking forward to interacting with the community and learning more about the priorities as we prepare for the 2021-22 school budget. Right now, we have 6 people signed on, and we'll wait a few more minutes to let people come into our forum before we begin. Thank you for your patience. Just gonna. Good evening, everyone. Once again, this is Brett Provenzano, Superintendent of Fairport Schools. Welcome to our 2021-22 budget presentation. It's an opportunity. The Board of Education gets to interact and hear from community members on what their priorities are. Tonight, our hopes and goals for the session are to talk about our budget goals, understand the governor's initial proposal for school funding, and understand the school community's budget priorities as we are in the initial phases of our budget process. Again, we are here at Fairport High School. We are also live on YouTube Live, Fairport's social media platform. We'll also be placing this on our Facebook Live, so people can observe and see this for the next several weeks. Our budget goals, as we always do, we begin the budget season as soon as the budget is complete in May. We begin a process through the summer and finalize our budget goals. So we have a good command of how to plan and how to make sure that our Fairport story comes to life through our budget. It was a challenging budget process initially because we're building a budget trying to consider the impacts of a pandemic. There's many unknowns, but we are planning for a full school year. We are hopeful that the data will continue to trend in the right direction and will continue to do things in a safe way that brings our students and staff back to school. And we are hoping to maximize our resources to support our strategic initiatives relative to educational programming, diversity, equity, and inclusion, instructional technology, and facilities planning. As with any budget and budget season, we are always looking for ways to discover efficiencies, analyze positions to make sure that we're doing all we can to support our students in the most cost-effective way for our community. And more than ever, we're monitoring and strategically utilizing our reserve funds as needed through effective planning during these very challenging, uncertain economic times. The use of our reserves will be very important. And Mr. Stevens, over the next several weeks, will be talking about that along with the rest of the board. Through proper planning, we can hopefully support our incredible school community and programming. After the presentation, I'll be sharing some information on our thought exchange. We will use the chat feature on the YouTube channel to answer any questions that you might have. If we do not get to answer all the questions or have answers to questions, a Q&A document will be created and also shared. The complete thought exchange will be posted on our district website for public preview. Right now, Assistant Superintendent for Business, Matt Stevens, is going to be talking about New York State aid to education, just to give a general overview.
Good, thank you and good evening. So we're just going to take a quick look at the proposal, the executive governor's proposal for state aid for education for 2021-22 school year. So overall, the initial proposal is a $2.1 billion increase overall for education in the state. Now, one key piece of that is there are federal dollars linked to this proposal. So there's actually a reduction in state funding to be supplanted by some federal funding. So you see $3.85 billion of federal coronavirus relief supplemental appropriations act. It's a federal grant. And then during 2020-21 school year, we received some federal CARES Act money, of which will go away in 2021-22. But again, you see the $3.85 billion of the coronavirus relief funds. Overall, there's also a reduction built into the proposal of $1.35 billion spread across schools in the state. It's a local district funding adjustment. A couple other highlights within the proposal for foundation aid, which is our largest aid for general operations state aid. There's no change in foundation aid, that remains flat. There is a proposal to combine 11 expense-based aids into what is called services aid. So that would be our BOCES, our textbook, software, library materials, transportation aid, and the aids you see listed there. Overall, it's formula-based, so these are expense-based aids for expenses that take place in the 2020-21 school year. It's aided in the following year. If the formula were to run, it would be a $693 million increase overall. There's a decrease of the $693 million after the formula runs, which results in a net decrease of $393 million to schools across the state from 2021. I know it's a little bit of a moving piece. First, they run the formula and then apply a decrease reduction of that $693 million. Overall, for Fairport, what it looks like for our expense-based aids for expenses this year, aided next year, about a $495,000 increase, which primarily is related to Monroe One BOCES has a capital project that began this school year. So that's over 3 years. There's an expense for school districts for next year, and our aid portion of that's about $500,000. Again, the local district funding adjustment, it's a negative adjustment of state aid. About for Fairport, that's $5.4 million. That is offset and supplanted with the Coronavirus Relief Act funds of $5.4 million. So again, you can see the reduction of state funding supplanted by federal funds. Overall, as we look at the local district funding adjustment and long-term planning and the federal funds will give us some short-term funding. But as we look at the funding adjustment, if that remains long-term and we have no additional state support into the future, it's just something to keep an eye on as we look into our long-range planning for budgeting. And then another piece within the proposal was STAR. There was some talk about this being in the state aid proposal. STAR reimbursement to schools is essentially part of the tax levy. It's the portion that the state reimburses school districts for the basic enhanced STAR on folks' tax bills. That was not additional aid to schools, as it may appear on the state aid run, simply was used to help calculate the maintenance of effort and that funding adjustment for schools. So in a nutshell, that's a quick summary of the executive budget proposal for school districts in the state.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Really appreciate the summary. We are in the phase of the budget cycle to talk about our instructional programming. It is the part of the budget process where we really try to get a lot of feedback. Our Board of Education is really interested in hearing multiple different perspectives. So at the end of the day, when we present a budget, it reflects the needs and priorities of our community and can continue the excellent programming and commitment that we have to our children and of course our community overall. Again, this is a opportunity for us to share what we've learned so far through our thought exchange we shared in the beginning of the week. It's really impressive. I don't recall a time when we've been able to get as many thoughts and perceptions. Again, these are just perceptions. It's qualitative data, and we're measuring that up against other sources of information and feedback we continually receive to help build our budget. But what's most interesting, we asked the question, what are the most important things to consider as we begin to plan for the 21-22 school budget? All right. This was planning for next year. We received 676 participants who took our survey. That's a very high, very good, well-received amount of people who participated. We had 679 thoughts and 34,000 ratings. That really shares information on what people were thinking. It has an algorithm, this program, to get a sense on what the priorities are. Again, it's one data point. It's not the only data point. We've done other forums with our staff where union leaders have come to talk to the Board of Education about their hopes and priorities for the budget as well. And we continually always seek input from community. But this was just one way that we get a good pulse on what the community's perceptions were. Some key thoughts were about staffing. People really wanted to make sure that we are bringing back enough staff to support 5 days a week. The whole idea of returning to school safely and catching up academically was another priority. So that speaks to, again, the health and safety of our students and staff is always the priority, but also academic readiness and making sure that we're getting our younger students back to the classroom if we had to prioritize. These were our top thoughts for the 21-22 budget. Here are some themes that we were able to capture. Again, out of the 34,000 ratings, this is what was rating the highest. You know, the community wants full-time school. The mental health and social emotional wellness of our students is a priority. It's always good to see that our community has that as a top thought. You can see that, you know, that's right up there. And again, 5 days a week was another theme. And again, I think throughout the top themes that these ideas were central as we were reading through the survey results. Here, again, full-time students continue to have significant responses and priorities amongst the over 600 participants. The mental health theme was prevalent, and I'm really hopeful that we're going to be able to bring our students back in a way that gets them acclimated and supports them, because it's been a really challenging year, and it'll be a year plus as we enter next school year. And again, just recycling through the general theme that there's hopes and expectations that we are back in school 5 days a week, and that we have the right staffing to support a quality program, a program that our community and our students have come to expect. So at this point in time, if there's any questions out there from individuals that are watching, if Mr. Sliz wants to take some of this time to respond to some of the themes in the thought exchange, or some of the thoughts that we've been speaking to.
Yeah, this is what the board has been looking at since this whole thing started back in March. How can we get these kids into school safely and make sure that everyone is safe, and make sure that everyone is able to continue forward? And we look at this almost daily. We are constantly monitoring. As Brett put out a note, we're going to start March 17th, where kids are in school now on Wednesdays, because we're able to find the right way to do that. And as we continue to hear from the different agencies that we monitor that have been assisting us, the Monroe County Department of Health, the State Department of Health, the Centers for Disease Control down in Washington, D.C., and as they are constantly updating and looking at and monitoring this virus and how that works, that's for today. But as Brett said, this budget is for starting July 1 of the next fiscal year. So we're constantly hearing from residents. Brett has met with all the PTAs now.
Yes.
And there's been great feedback from our members of our PTAs at the different schools. So that's been very helpful. And the thought exchange, we are right here. We understand this, and that's our goal is to do things, but make sure that it's done safely.
And I would also echo, if you take a look all the way to the far right, I mean, a difference between like the STAR score of 4, and 3.5. I mean, there's really not a big differential there.
Mhm.
But I guess the point is, if I know the Board of Education, small class sizes is a priority, especially coming back from a pandemic.
Yep.
Making sure that we're trying to create environments that is conducive to learning, caring, and sharing, lots of interactions in class sizes that allow the attention that students will definitely be needing on their way back.
And we've always had a range for that number, and this year we're aiming for the bottom of that range,
Right.
as we come back in September.
And then you also have, again, what is woven throughout this survey are the hopes and expectations for us to really take care of and support the social emotional needs, the mental health needs of our students. We have students who have disconnected. Our goal is to help them transition as we move through the summer into orientations and in the fall. We know that it's going to take some work and effort to do that. We're going to plan for that. And I know, again, I think, if you take a look at our goals, that aligns with that as well.
And from a financial standpoint, the boards in the past have been very good in establishing those reserve funds. And as a couple of our board members said, those are the rainy day funds. And right now it's more than raining. So we're able to utilize those funds wisely. And as Matt Stevens alluded to earlier with his presentation, we have set information from the state as of today, February 11th. Who knows what tomorrow, February 12th might bring. That's constantly changing. And we have a good idea, but we know with the shape of the finances of the state, that could change as well. Also with the finances and the different changes that are going on in Washington, those finances could also change and help us. We don't know.
Yeah, over the next several weeks, Mr. Stevens, don't be afraid to jump in. But over the next several weeks, we'll advocacy will continue. We're constantly looking at and monitoring what's happening with federal stimulus. And I know it's too early to tell, but that will impact this budget and how we can support our students. I would also mention that the instruction, the curriculum management, making sure that we will take care of the social, emotional, and health and well-being of our students as they transition back, but there's also many interests in ensuring that, you know, our curriculum aligns where students are academically, that we have our curriculum maps, meeting students where they are. That's part of this planning. Coordinating opportunities for our teachers to come together to adjust the maps, look at data to ensure that as the transitions occur from grade level to grade level, that they're adjusted accordingly and supported in a way that helps them move forward as they transition back. And we are hopeful that the numbers will continue to trend, that vaccination will become prevalent, and will receive guidance and support to bring students back. We're planning for full 5-day instruction. We're planning for students to be back, and we're hopeful that we'll continue to trend, and the data reveals that. And we'll learn that as we move through this process as well. But again, these are the top themes. Looking for any type of questions or feedback in the chat, and we'll give it a couple more minutes to allow that to happen.
And I can add to Mr. Provenzano and the state aid piece overall, as school districts await the final budget at the state level, which is due in April. Again, the efforts from associations and folks across the state continue to take place as it relates to state dollars and the proposal itself and how that impacts schools. So April is when we see the budget finalized and school districts have their final state aid numbers for the following school year's budget.
So we're being told that the chat's not working. I was able to put something in the chat. I don't know my glasses. So I'll put another in there, test. From Fairport Central School District, chat seems to be working. What's that? It's not? It is. Oh, good.
It's working.
Hi, Erica. You're on Zoom. You're always there to help and support and be our eyes in the sky. So thank you. So if there's questions that people would like to ask, you may use the chat feature. Chat is up. We have multiple different district officials and board members. Thanks, Mary Caitlin. And again, the budget is a reflection of your priorities. It tells a story. Our Fairport story has always been about giving students multiple opportunities to interact with each other, providing connections, making sure that the mental health and social emotional well-being of our students are well taken care of through high quality programming.
And Brad, after this evening, if people still have more input that they'd like to share,
Yeah.
how would they go about doing that?
So this actual presentation will be placed on our Facebook page, and there's questions and chat features there that we'll be monitoring to go back to, and we'll be answering those. The thought exchange will be placed on our district website so people can read through the results as well. And again, the information that we received through this one avenue to receive feedback will be a way for the board to make decisions and help prioritize our Fairport story and budget. There are important dates here to consider. On Tuesday, March 16th at 6:30, the Board of Education will be receiving the instructional budget draft. That's the first draft, where we will have information about the revenue pieces. And again, over the next several weeks, those revenue pieces will be coming in, and that will help us project the budget relative to our priorities. So we should have a good idea of how the budget is coming in. And then the next date is April 20th. The board will have a final review and discussion, and then the adoption of the 21-22 budget. Now, our Board of Education is not afraid to put another meeting or two on the books if more needs to be discussed and processed as we move through this budget cycle. On Tuesday, May 4th at 6:30, there'll be a public hearing on the 2020-21 budget proposal. That will be, again, another opportunity for the community to listen and hear the final budget. And then on the 18th, which will be a Tuesday, the annual budget vote and board elections will be held at Joanna Perrin from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. We are looking forward to getting guidance on what that needs to look like. Will be voter mail-in or a live vote or a combination of both. So please stay tuned for that.
And the three meetings, the February 23rd, March 16th, and April 20th, those are our regular Board of Ed meetings. So that will be taking place during our regular meetings. And should the board need extra meetings, we will be obviously advertising those and putting those on the website so that you can watch those as well.
Mr. Stevens is reminding me that it is the 2021-22 budget. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. We'll look forward to receiving feedback. We'll be checking our Facebook page and getting information and adding it to all the other bits of information that we receive from our community. We appreciate everyone's input and participation in the thought exchange. We're grateful for the partnership that we have with our families and our staff and community at large. Thank you very much.
Have a great night.